If I've learned anything from my unceremonious dismissal from medical school, it's that I learn best when I do things wrong over and over again and then eventually figure out how to do it right. So today we're going to talk about what I've learned just kind of like tracking acoustic guitars. I've got so many acoustic guitar videos on this channel, and as you can tell from the early days, sometimes I was just off the mark and it really kind of sounded like trash. Too much reverb, blah, blah, blah. And then every now and then I get it right. So what I've learned is you only need two things to make a great acoustic guitar sound. You need one solid microphone. This right here is the Earthworks SR25. And you need an acoustic guitar that you can make sound good. Doesn't matter what acoustic guitar it is, if you can make it sound good, you have a good microphone that can kind of like catch the articulation of it. There's a lot of different tips and tricks that you can use to just get great acoustic guitar sounds, okay? Now, a lot of the inspiration for this video is because I remember not knowing how to do any of this, and basically I would kind of like look up forum stuff, and then it'd be like, okay, point it at the 12th fret. And I'd do that, and sometimes it'd sound good, sometimes it wouldn't sound good, because it's all contextual. So we're going to go over a bunch of different things, make this a crash course in just recording a bunch of different types of acoustic guitars. Like I said, whether it's like a Dreadnought, or maybe more of like a Grand Auditorium shape, the application of what you're trying to do is the most important thing. So I've got a couple different examples. One of them using an acoustic guitar single mic that's going to sit in a full mix where it's not the driving force behind everything. I'm going to use a Dreadnought single guitar mic technique, where to place the mic to get the best results for that particular type of guitar with a vocal, and then a stereo example where I have two different microphones on the guitar, and then also kind of blending in a direct out from the electronics on the onboard system. Then at the end, I'm going to go through how I mix them, just to kind of talk about some simple plugins, and then you should have everything that you need. Or you can learn the wrong way to do this and then really do it however you want, because at the end of the day, all of this is to taste. What's wrong or right is really just kind of dependent on what sound you're going for. Basically, this is just a bunch of stuff that I've learned from doing it in ways that I wish I would have done differently in the past, and stuff that I've found really helpful now. All right, so the first order of business is deciding what I want here. The goal here is to have an acoustic guitar that is going to sit in a bigger mix. It's going to have drums, bass, electric guitar. It's going to be kind of a full mix in vocals, right? So I want something that's going to have a little bit of upper mid-range to kind of pop through a mix and not necessarily be responsible for holding down the entire rhythmic fork, as some acoustic guitar tracks are, all right? So what I really love about this Taylor 614 is that I think it's really kind of the guitar that's built for that. Now you can get similar results depending on mic placement as far as what you want out of the guitar, but I think a really important question to ask yourself is, what do you like about the guitar you're using? What do you not like? I'm fortunate enough that I have a few different guitars that I can kind of choose between which ones I use, but knowing what you're going for and kind of like using the tools that you already have to create it, I think is of paramount importance and something that gets overlooked. And this is a great example of kind of thinking of traditional tips and stuff like point the mic 6 inches away from the 12th fret, and how that could be absolutely wrong for certain situations, all right? So right now we're going to start, the mic is this far away, one vegan bratwurst away from the actual guitar, okay? You can see it, it's right here. Now we're going to do just a couple different examples of the mic at the 12th fret, the mic right above the sound hole, and the mic at the bridge. And I think you're probably going to be able to hear the difference pretty well, all right? So first things first, this is going to be 12th fret, okay? Sounds pretty good. Again, you know, like I say, there's no really right or wrong way to do it, but intention is the key here, okay? Another thing I really like about this guitar is that the mids of it really sustain super well, okay? So I got this open D minor thing where I get the open D string. Okay, that's 12th fret. As soon as I move it to over the sound hole, you can already hear the frequency shift as it goes through. So what I'm going for, I think, sounds a lot better here. You hear that drone of that open D string as compared to the 12th fret. So at that 12th fret, I've lost, I think, a lot of body comparatively to where... Okay, I think that sounds great. How about the bridge? Let's go a little bit further. I'm trying to keep the exact same distance away from everything. Think of that, and then back to where I think the sweet spot is for this guitar. To me, there's no question that right here, kind of like at the very, I don't know if you can see it through this camera angle, but it's right where the fretboard meets the sound hole is where I'm kind of pointing this microphone at. I really think that's the sweet spot for this. This particular application. We're going to do other ones soon. And honestly, I'm impressed by the sound of the bridge. Now, you can hear that it's almost like you turn the treble down on it, okay? Because we're getting a little more bass. I'm impressed with this Taylor's how it sounds. We're going to do a Dreadnought in a minute just to kind of hear the difference between that. But I think there's probably something about the V bracing on this guitar that makes the bridge sound really good. But again, I'm going to do kind of like a different, more just together strumming in the same 3-part pattern. So here's 12th fret. Or that sound hole sweet spot. Or right off the bridge. Now, one advantage for the bridge might be that you're actually getting more of the sound of the pick hitting the strings, which in some kind of percussive deals where you want to lock in with something else, that could add like an extra layer of, like I said, just kind of like application specific stuff, right? I don't necessarily want that. So I'm going to track this entire thing really right here on the sound hole. I'm going to do it right now. So next up we have a Dreadnought by D'Angelico, and this is going to be just an acoustic song, just acoustic guitar and a vocal. I wanted to use this as an example just to showcase the difference between different size guitar and how the mic placement has kind of a different vibe, right? So essentially we're going to do the exact same thing as before, starting on the 12th fret.
Nice job. Nice sound effects.
So you can already tell it has a little more body than the 614. And the reason I wanted to use this is because this actual song has a lot of a lot of kind of like walking bass notes in between the chords. So I thought that a Dreadnought would be better suited for that. All right, now it works at the 12th fret, so that could be good advice. But what if we move it to the same place as the 614? And then let's use the bridge. This is the last one. And again, I'm trying to keep it the same distance apart. So to me, in the bridge, it's not the best way for the high end of the guitar to really kind of speak. This is a little boomier and a little less articulate than the Taylor was. Even here in the sweet spot for the last guitar, I'm not getting a lot of separation from the different kind of frequency bands that I'm going for. So I think personally, pointed at the 12th fret, again, just about that far off. I feel like I'm getting the best of the character of the guitar while also keeping the articulation of the sound that I'm going for, which again, I think is kind of a pretty noticeable difference, at least to my ears, from this and that 614, which again is just a different body shape, different types of wood, both great guitars. It's just kind of like just different tastes, right? So I really think that pointing it at the 12th fret-ish, you know, somewhere in this general vicinity, allows me to get the clarity from the low end and still get kind of like a decent, well-rounded, balanced sound. So let's track it. All right, here we go.
She's got both hands in her pocket, and she won't look at you, won't look at you. She eyes true love and so museum. She's got a halo around her finger around you. You know that I love you, boy. Hard like Mexico, rejoice. At this point, I've gotta choose, nothing to lose.
All right, so finally getting into the realest of the professional acoustic guitar recording. We're going to record in stereo, pan them left and right. I'm also going to get the direct out of this guitar. It has an amplification system. So I'm plugging the DI straight into Universal Audio 4710. One of the microphones is also going in there. I added a Neumann KM 184 for the bridge. And I have the Earthworks now in pretty much the same spot as I did for the first one, because again, I'm familiar with how it sounds on this guitar, but now I have two microphones. They're both as close as I can get to the exact distance from the guitar, so there shouldn't be any phasing issues. Basically, just a way to check for phase, honestly, is just to mess around with it and make sure it sounds good. And I actually like panning them in the DAW while I'm recording it, because I feel like I get the best just idea of what the stereo field is going to sound like. And again, you can hard pan them all the way left, all the way right. You can kind of just do them a little half and half. But after this, we're going to talk about how I kind of EQ these, because having more isn't always necessarily better. So we're going to talk about that. And we're just going to rock out an Andrea and Sean original acoustic right now. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Together, baby. I curse the tides when they were true. Your love away from me, drift away into the darkest sea.
Alright, so now we're in the mixing stage. This is going to be the Dreadnought version that we did. This is a cover Lady Gaga song, Alejandro. We've got Drea singing on it. And really, I just want to show you how if you record it well, you don't really have to do much of anything as far as like the mixing and the processing. That's why I love that Earthworks microphone. It's just really kind of dialed in just to exactly what you'd want for an acoustic guitar mic, right? So here's what the acoustic guitar sounds like after the mix, I suppose. Okay, so there's one plugin on the acoustic guitar track, right? This is just the single track one, and it is something that I have found absolutely invaluable, the Fabfilter Pro-Q3. Okay, now you can EQ these things in a lot of different ways to taste. You know, all of this stuff is, there's no right or wrong way to do it, like I've been saying. The nice thing about this is you can have each of these, you can put this plugin on different channels, right? So I only have two tracks, the vocal and the guitar. I have the plugin on the same thing. The beautiful thing about it is you can have them both open at the same time. On the left, I've got the acoustic guitar. On the right, I have Drea's vocals. And what you can do is you can actually see them together, and you can see where the acoustic guitar is stepping on the vocals, here the vocals are stepping on the guitar, etc. Like right now, if I go down to this spot right here, I can see her vocal pattern lined up over just the guitar, right? So that's allowed me to kind of like, all right, maybe I want to dip a little bit here and dip a little bit here to have her vocals kind of come out. So real quick, I'm just going to solo the acoustic guitar. I'll take the EQ off. So this is just flat. Still sounds pretty good. With the EQ on, you can see that I boosted a little bit of the higher end. If I want more of like this, that trebly sound, which honestly, that kind of high treble sound is something that you might be really familiar with because in a bigger mix, a lot of people tend to mix those. I personally kind of like mixing acoustic guitars a little bit darker, so I'll take that way down. I think it had some articulation, but it's not crazy. And then again, with the vocal, she's just a baby. When a boyfriend's a guitar, just a guitar. And I think that really sits well together. So again, the Fabfilter Pro-Q3, awesome EQ tool that I have on literally every track in every session because you can just kind of like see how it's affecting other tracks and stuff, right? Now, on the entire bus, I have what's really another plugin that I like. This is a stereo EQ from Native Instruments called a passive EQ. And what I like how this one actually approaches boosting the lows and kind of like sculpting a little bit of the mids out. Usually I like keeping most of the mids in, but as you'll hear, with and without it. So this is with it. Without it. With. You can kind of just hear the contour that it adds, and I think it does a great job of that. Again, you know, whatever EQ, even if you just have stock like EQs with your DAW, whether it's Logic or whatever else, you can achieve these results. I just really like the passive EQ from Native Instruments. After that, I do have a bus compressor to kind of get it to fit a little better. Now, the interesting about this, if you see it working, you can see right here, my personal rule is to never have more than 4 dB of compression going at any one time, unless it's for like effect, which I really never use anyway. But this is something else I've learned too. So here's without the compressor. With. So one thing that I notice is, you know, a lot of people say it's like the glue that keeps the mix together. I really think so because without it, it definitely sounds like we recorded an acoustic guitar first, then we recorded a vocal second. So when we kind of bring those dynamics down, and again, what I always shoot for is that 4 dB to get rid of it, right? To get rid of too much. Well, I think it keeps most of the dynamic there, but maybe just kind of smooths it out a little bit, right? A lot of times people use a compressor as a way to fix mistakes. I try to just, get the actual recording as good as I can as far as like a dynamic level go. In fact, if you look at, so right here, this bottom one is the actual guitar performance. So as you can see, it's not perfectly level. There's still some peaks where maybe I hit some stuff a little harder than normal. And again, if you've seen my live stuff or live feeds, you know that I'm no stranger to flubbing a note or maybe hitting something a little too hard. But I really try my best to capture like a decent performance. So that's always number one. You never want to have to try to fix stuff. And that's when you get in the problem of like, all right, now I'm trying to compress and smooth this acoustic guitar track out, but I'm going to like have this compress 8 decibels or something when I maybe hit something way too hard. So either just retrack it, just quit being lazy and retrack it until it's, a decently okay performance. Or what I've found, if it is something like that, is to stack compressors. Instead of like doing an 8 decibel compression thing, do 4 and then another 4 or whatever it ends up being back to back. But again, I like that. I like the Native Instruments style bus compressor because it does a great job. And then reverb. One of the main things that I've learned from my earlier recordings, as maybe you've even heard, that's a good example of that break right there. So here's the reverb. There's a little bit of a tail on it. Here's without it, real quick. Dry. Adding just a smidge. Look at the dry versus wet, 0.036. Barely any reverb, but just a little bit on there. The temptation is always to put way too much reverb on there, which is fine. And if you're doing it as an effect, that's cool. But for this, we're going for like an in-the-room type vibe, clean acoustic chain. So just a little bit of reverb. And then the last thing, which doesn't really make it sound any different, this is the Fabfilter, huge fan of their stuff, Pro L2 plugin, which is a limiter to kind of, get the right final signal on. So again, there's not a whole lot of mixing going on, just a little bit of EQ, and that's why if you really be thoughtful about that mic placement and which guitar you're using, where you're going to use it, what you're going for, I think you'll find that you don't have to do a whole lot of stuff in post because really you've already got it mostly how it's sounding. And in this case, just a little bit of enhancement to try to fill it out, get a little bit more high end there, a little bit more low end cut, a little bit of the mids for the vocal to kind of pull through, and you end up with that track. All right, so now we have the stereo mics and the DI, okay? This is what it sounds like right now with some plugins and stuff on it. So this is a little more compressed is what I was going for, and a little bit more reverb. Still not a ton of reverb. Essentially what I have is I have the 2 microphones panned left and right. Not all the way left and all the way right. In fact, real quick, here, listen to it all the way left, hard panned, without the DI. I kind of feel like because of the articulation and how tight it is, I'm getting a little bit too much on the right side of this. And when it's hard left and right like that, I can really kind of hear a little bit too much of the clicking of the pick on there. So that's why I've got them kind of panned, not all the way, halfway to all the way, I suppose. Now these are just the guitars, right, without the DI. Here's a little bit of the DI. This is how much I ended up settling on. I'll put it all the way up. In fact, here, this is just the DI right now. Now, if I were to be playing this live where I just use DI, I would have taken the treble down aggressively, okay? I think in a recording situation, I kept this flat just as an example, essentially. And I'm actually just going to dial this in. I had it at like minus 17 dB, I believe. And basically, I'm just using this in lieu of taking the treble and boosting it like I did in the previous single guitar EQ video. So a little more natural of a sound where I just kind of get that snappiness of the DI, but blending it with the warmth of the actual microphones, which I think sounds the most realistic of it. Again, everything has the Pro-Q3 on there, and you can kind of see each one of these. You can see this is just the DI track, right? And I have this where I can see the other instances of the Q3. And you can see I boosted a little bit of the low end, because that's the nice thing about having a DI. Usually the low end is going to be tighter and it won't be kind of like as muddy from the DI, but you have to compensate for it because usually acoustic guitar direct outputs are going to be super bright, and that's, again, not my sound. If you want to do that, that's cool. That's totally cool. You know, a lot of people do that. It sounds great. I just generally try to go for a mellower sound, so you can kind of see I'm cutting a lot of the mids where the other guitars have what I think of a more pleasant, natural sound, and then just kind of bringing down a little bit of that snappy thing. Again, here's the DI without any EQ by itself. With the EQ, I'm getting more of that low end. And then we bring the vocals in.
Juliana, do you wanna get together, baby? Underwater, it's been a long time since I saw you all alone. Juliana, it's time to come home.
Okay, cool. So I think everything is kind of vibing. Essentially what I did, I have those 3 guitar tracks, I put them on a bus, and then I put yet another instance of the Pro-Q3 on there, so then I can kind of like shoot that out with just all of the guitars and Andrea's vocals. Then I can kind of see it to just make sure that everything is still vibing. I go through the passive EQ from NI again, and essentially it's the exact same signal chain as the single guitar thing once I kind of have it vibing, with the exception of there being a little more reverb on this one. No reverb. You can hear it's super dry. Dry as the desert. And then add the reverb. There it is. You can see the compressor right there. Never getting above that 4 dB thing. That's where I set it. By the way, to make sure that your compressor doesn't go above that 4 dB, it's all about the threshold of where you set it. See, if I really lower that threshold, you'll see this.
Juliana, do you wanna
Then it sounds super compressed and unnatural. So now I just up the threshold until that needle never goes above 4. So that's just my own personal thing. Again, all of this is just taste. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe you want to do it totally different. That's cool, but this is your example. So definitely, I think that I think let this be an example for, like, yeah, I think this sounds pretty good with like the stereo mics and the direct output. But does it really sound like that much better than just kind of taking your time with one microphone and letting it sit with a vocal? I mean, you know, you be the judge. I definitely have more options when I have more microphones. But like I said, I think you just need one really good microphone. I love that Earthworks mic. I'm using it on pretty much all my recordings now. It works great for electric guitar and other stuff too. And yeah, it just makes life easier not having to EQ stuff as much. But like I said, let it be a lesson, because don't just believe everything you read and think that that's like, oh, this is how I have to do it. It's all contextual. And again, that's always the answer that nobody wants to hear, just because it makes you kind of take extra steps. But a lot of this video is inspired because somebody asked me some questions about kind of how I recorded my mics, and they're like, I wish I could do that, but I can only afford one microphone right now. And it's like, well, yeah, if that's fine. That's totally fine. You don't need any more than just one microphone. And you know, you can always make your guitar sound better by practicing. That's another pro tip for you. But yeah, so if you're interested in the Earthworks mic, I'll leave a link in the description. And then also the cool stuff that I've been working on with Drea, stay tuned. Make sure you check out her channel too, because that video should be up by now. And if you have any questions or comments, hit me up in the comment section, Instagram, YouTube, or the website. Talk to y'all soon. Thanks a lot.